By daily proof, you shall find me both loving and kind. Our hearts sing, our power absolute. But around the throne, thunder rolls, and who will be drawn by devilish devices? For I would like to see
your head
off your shoulders.
According to the law, and by the law, I am judged to die. And therefore, I will speak nothing against it.
May the 19th, 1536. Anne Boleyn stands upon a scaffold at the Tower of London. With composure, she addresses a crowd for the very last time. Anne has been tried by an all-male jury, including members of her own family. Adultery, treason, even incest are among the charges. The punishment is death. But is Anne Boleyn guilty? Or did her position of power at the Tudor court become problematic for the men around her? How did the meteoric rise of Anne Boleyn end in one of the most dramatic downfalls in history and the first ever execution of a Queen of England? In 1526, Henry VIII sits upon the throne. He's now been married to Catherine of Aragon for almost 20 years, but they still haven't produced the much-needed male heir. The king is frustrated and impatient. He has convinced himself that his marriage to Catherine is invalid. But there is a much younger lady at court. She's charming, witty, and intelligent. Unsurprisingly, she's caught the king's eye. She'd been in the service of the Queen of France, was highly educated and inquisitive of new ideas. She was a leader of fashion and a shrewd diplomat in her own right. She was mesmerizing, and Henry was transfixed. But he would have to move heaven and earth to end his first marriage and marry the sophisticated young Anne. It would take 7 long years. In a hammer-blow move, Henry breaks with Rome and makes himself supreme head of the Church of England, meaning that he can grant himself an annulment. The wheels of the English Reformation are firmly set in motion. But it was Anne herself who showed Henry the texts that inspired him with the idea that a monarch's authority was greater than the Pope's. Anne played a key part in ushering in the English Reformation, but she was walking on dangerous ground. Of all the men surrounding Anne's downfall, one stands out. The son of a blacksmith, he too has skillfully scaled the ladders of power. Known to us as the Great Fixer, the king's right-hand man, Thomas Cromwell. Initially one of the architects of Henry's second marriage, Cromwell and Anne are at first firm allies. But Cromwell now watches on with increasing concern as Anne involves herself in Reformation politics. They disagree over what should happen with the money from the dissolved monasteries. Cromwell is in danger of being overshadowed. But he's never one to back the wrong horse. Anne and Henry's marriage at first was a happy one. Henry seemed in awe of his charismatic new wife. In one of his love letters, Henry declares he has been struck by the dart of love. But in January 1536, Anne suffered a third miscarriage. To make matters worse, it's likely that the child was a boy. It's reported that Henry berated Anne while she was still recovering. Anne must have been devastated by the loss of another child, but she was also filled with fear. Things are not looking good. Anne's position lacks the strength that a male heir would bring. Is this the point at which the tide began to turn against Anne? It's 9 a.m. on the 2nd of May, 1536, and the court is at Greenwich Palace. Anne is with her ladies watching a game of real tennis. Without explanation, she is ordered to present herself before the Privy Council under escort. Anne must have been filled with foreboding. She knows that things have been unraveling in her marriage for some time, and she doesn't know what is about to happen. Anne enters the council chamber to face a room of men, all seated. One of them is the Duke of Norfolk, her own uncle. Charges are read aloud, and they're shocking. Adultery with 3 men. Henry Norris, one of the king's oldest friends. Mark Smeaton, a court musician. And a third, not yet revealed. In a humiliating move, Anne is arrested and taken by Cromwell to the Tower of London in broad daylight. Anne is assigned 4 ladies to wait on her. None of them are her friends. They have been chosen by Cromwell to spy on her and wait until the evidence emerges. Everything is moving at a disturbing pace. But where is the king in all this? Henry appears to be keeping a very low profile. Meanwhile, it's been revealed that the 3rd man Anne is accused of adultery with is George Boleyn, her own brother. As evidence mounts, it's beginning to look like Anne's trial has only one outcome. 2 weeks later, Anne sits on a raised platform in the Great Hall at the Tower of London. Her father is present, and a jury has been assembled by Cromwell. Presiding over the trial as judge is her uncle, the Duke of Norfolk. In total, Anne is now accused of over 20 acts of adultery with 5 men. Days before Anne's trial, 4 of the accused men had endured their own trial with no witnesses present. All protested their innocence, with the exception of one, the musician Mark Smeaton. The only commoner, interrogated for 24 hours and possibly tortured under Cromwell's instruction. All are found guilty. And yet, at her own trial, Anne remains composed and unmoved, defending herself clearly and denying all charges. But Cromwell plays a final hand. He has revealed that the Queen has plotted the death of the king. This is treason and punishable by death. His evidence: Anne had flippantly remarked to Henry Norris, "You would look for dead man's shoes." This would have been nothing more than a joke by Anne, but Cromwell has twisted it into something sinister and deadly, which is the hard evidence he needs. Norfolk sends the jury to deliberate, and in moments, the verdict is in. It's unanimous. Anne is guilty and sentenced to death. Of course, the king doesn't attend the trial. He's been busy sending messages and gifts, but not to Anne, to one of her ladies-in-waiting, Jane Seymour. The king's final act of mercy towards Anne is to request that the execution be carried out by a French swordsman rather than the clumsier method of the headsman's axe. Henry had sent for the swordsman before Anne's trial had even taken place. After addressing the crowd, Anne removes her headdress. The executioner kneels and asks for her forgiveness. Her eyes are bandaged. 2 swings of the sword for momentum. Anne's head falls into the straw. The end of Anne Boleyn's life is undeniably a tragedy. Was she guilty of the crimes laid against her, or was her downfall a prearranged, masterly plot? Was Henry pulling the strings of Anne's destruction, having grown tired of her and the lack of a male heir? Or did Cromwell see Anne's star fading and orchestrate her downfall? Anne Boleyn captivated a king, shaped the future of an entire kingdom, and gave birth to one of the most celebrated queens in history, Elizabeth I. For all her achievements, her reign was a short one, mired in drama and scandal. As a master of power play at the Tudor court, did she simply overplay her hand? Or was her destruction a foregone conclusion at the hands of power-hungry men? What do you think?